What's up, founders? Welcome back to Next Round. I'm your host, Chris. Today we have very special guest, Craig Cummings, who is co-founder and general partner at Moonshots Capital, a seed stage venture capital firm that invests in extraordinary leadership. We had his co-founder on, Kelly Purdue, a couple weeks ago. Craig, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, so happy to be here. Thank you for hosting me and for hosting Kelly. I know we had a great time on the show.
Appreciate that, man. That's always my favorite compliment when people that I interview give me compliments on my interviewing, because I've been doing this for 10 years. So I'll never get tired of that compliment, like, because this is my thing. So I have to be good at it. I take it very serious, research, all of that good stuff. So I appreciate that compliment.
You got the vibe, baby. You got the vibe.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know you are in the military as well. So can you give us a little bit of insight on your experience there?
Sure. Very military family I come from, which I'm sure you hear that a lot, right? It's a family business. My father was an Air Force officer, intelligence officer. My mother, they were divorced, but my mother was a Department of the Army civilian. And both my brothers went to West Point, and each of them did 26, 28 years in the service. So it was in the DNA, although I felt a lot of pressure not to go to West Point because everyone's like, well, you're going to go to West Point, right, Craig? And I'm like, well, I'm looking at it. And I did find it was a perfect fit for me, even though I had been accepted to the Air Force Academy. My father's like, why would you join the Army when you can go to the Air Force and have such a better quality of life? Dad. It's the leading of the humans, the focus on the leading of the humans versus the hardware. But, you know, don't need to go down that rabbit hole. I look at all the services now as just one, we're just one family. When you served in combat with the other services, you don't make fun of them as much as you do when you're maybe a cadet, just literally one team, just wearing different clothes. But I went to West Point and I ended up having a great experience there. I don't think I knew what I did not know what I was getting into when I got there. When everybody started shouting at me
Oh man,
about 5 minutes after getting there.
you were
And
there back when the shouting was like normal,
oh
and that
yeah,
was like part of it. Yeah.
we were the last class that they had something called the fourth class system. So kind of like the hazing system. And so two weeks in, I called my brothers. I'm like, yo, you guys did not tell me about this place. And they said, well, we thought if we told you too much, you wouldn't want to go. But I figured if they got through it, then I could get through it. So then out of West Point, I was commissioned. I was an intel officer, but with the initial 3-year assignment as an armor officer. So I went eventually from tanks to NSA. And when I got to the NSA, they said, hey, we're working on something new. We're going to pull you over to this new idea that we're developing called information operations slash warfare, which, today we know as cyber war. So interestingly, I was on the ground floor of cyber for the Army, and part of we put together a company at NSA, and we pulled into that company any soldiers doing attack, exploit, or defend missions at NSA, and that was initially called Bravo Companies, MI Battalion, and then became a detachment, and then a battalion, which Jen Easterly led, and then it became a brigade. So it's crazy in hindsight to think about being on the founding team of Army Cyber, and then did a PhD at Columbia, taught at West Point. That's where I met Kelly. Kelly won season 2 of The Apprentice, which I'm sure you sussed out when you interviewed Kelly. And then I got assigned the additional duty, as military officers do, to bring the winner of season 2 Apprentice back to West Point. And that's when we became fast friends. And that was in January 2005. So I say that Kelly and I celebrated our 20th friendversary earlier this year. So anyway, left West Point, another NSA tour, Afghanistan, back to NSA, and then what a lot of people know me is by virtue of that I left the Army my 17th year. So I left the day that I had paid back the time to the Army for having done a PhD while on active duty. So there was a 5 year time commitment with
Hmm.
that. So everybody, pretty much everybody, minus my business partners, my family, like, what are you doing? 3 more years, you get the retirement. So I joke nowadays that I'm a quitter. So I quit in the 17th year, no retirement, and did my first startup.
Wow, quitting after leaving after 17 years and then going to the startup world. What was that transition like mentally? Because that has to be a kind of a weird leap, right?
I'd always said, Chris, that it wasn't about the retirement, the pension. It was I was just gonna keep doing it as long as I felt like I was having fun. And I think I had the proverbial entrepreneurial itch that I really wanted to scratch. But what happened was I left, and literally 2 weeks later, my wife finds a lump on her right breast, which is cancer, and then she immediately has a double mastectomy, reconstruction, and chemo. And fast forward now, the startup, we had two more pay periods. We had 45 days of cash, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people either thought I was crazy to leave that late. So it was definitely sort of a hero or goat type moment to think I'd leave. My wife gets cancer, so I have this great medical umbrella keeping us dry, and then we're almost out of money. But I managed to pull together this meeting at NSA one day, and the next thing you know, the senior intel officer of the Army wants to do what we were pitching. So right as the plane was about to crash, we went from the stress of running out of money to the stress of now we have to deliver on what we've promised in our in our pitch deck, and we did.
What a trade, man. Personally, I enjoy those kind of situations. I like the pressure of having to deliver because it means I'm in the right position. That means that I'm making progress. I'm getting more of what I want. Even though, like, when I walk in certain rooms to do interviews now, it's like, wait a minute, this is so and so. Like, this is a big deal. So, like, I have to be more on point. And I don't know, maybe I'm weird. I like that kind of pressure.
100%. And I like that you said that because I wrote down a quote last Friday. I went to the change of command at in Tampa for Special Operations Command, and the outgoing four-star commander Brian Fenton said, "Pressure is a privilege," and he was speaking on behalf of the entire command, who faces pressure every day with their important role in our national security ecosystem. And it just really, I so it gets to what you're saying, right? Like how awesome to feel pressure and have to deliver under pressure.
And I think that if you're in this world of entrepreneurship, the startup world, venture capital, all of that stuff, that it's just part of it naturally. So if you're not comfortable with it, if you don't learn to love it, it's kind of hard to exist in the space because pretty much no matter what you do, you're going to feel pressure at some point and you just have to get comfortable with that and learn how to live with it. I don't think you can allow it to take you out of your space mentally. I think you still got to take care of yourself physically, obviously. But once you have your own process for doing that, I think you actually thrive more under pressure than just the more boring lifestyle where it's kind of mundane and repetitive.
100%. I mean, it's like the adage, you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And it also speaks to a condition that entrepreneurs will face upon an exit. And when we ended up selling that software that I was talking about, right as we hit the ground. We basically sold that company to the Army. Army said, we don't want to license this indefinitely. We want to own the software. So we made a deal and sold them that software, which was tantamount to selling the product company. And then it started another company called Ride Scout, which I co-founded with a West Point classmate, Joseph Copser. Sean Lane was my co-founder in BTS. You know, talk about a complete different journey from software in the battlefield, now software to help people like catch a ride.
Completely opposite.
Yeah, yeah, completely. When we sold that company, it was such a grind, 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 grind. And then when we sold it, we had this big event with Mercedes. We sold it to Mercedes-Benz. And honestly, like the next day was like a letdown. You feel that you feel like that pressure goes away and you feel a little bit floating.
Hmm.
I didn't feel it as much on the first exit, but the second one definitely. So anyway, I'm circling back to the pressure and how the pressure is good, as you say, if you could figure out how to manage it with your lifestyle.
And I want to talk a little bit more about Ride Scout. It was ahead of its time in mobility and ultimately it was acquired. So, looking at today's landscape, where do you see the biggest opportunities for founders to build companies that will attract both commercial and strategic buyers?
Well, I think you can't that process has to be organic. I mean, the best stories are when the founder has experienced the problem like personally and knows the problem so intimately. And when I think back on Ride Scout, that Joseph Kopser, my co-founder, West Point classmate, what he had seen was in Iraq firsthand how many soldiers were being killed on the battlefield because of the movement of the supply of gas and oil on the battlefield. And so in his mind, he was trying to to optimize, to minimize our dependency on fossil fuels, but also literally he was commuting to the Pentagon from Arlington every day. And he's like, some days the bus is better. Some days it's better to bike. Some days I should just take a cab. Some days I should take a car to go. And that's when, as he was describing this, I'm like, you're onto something there. I think there's a company there, and that's how it was born. So when I think about your larger question, it has to be you want to solve for the problem, and not be the solution searching for the problem.
Not
And
be the solution
sometimes,
searching. That's good.
yeah, and as an investor, we're looking for must-haves, not nice-to-haves.
And when I hear that, I always have this. My second question, kind of a follow up, is what's the difference between, when you go to the doctor, they have that pain scale of 0 to 10. What's the difference between, as an investor, that you see between that pain that's a 6 or 7 and then the 10, where you're like, okay, this is big. We got to jump on this now. Because I'm pretty sure you've seen certain products where you're like, okay, we need to invest in this as soon as possible. And there's other ones where you're like, let's wait a little bit. So, like, is there a clear difference there?
Yeah, I mean, you basically have sort of pointed right at the heart of our decision making. And Kelly and I, we've invested a lot. I think 140 companies in the aggregate. I think about 250 million under management. But after about midway through our fund two, we were on the verge of investing in a horoscope company. Now, the horoscope company was crushing, and had at the 1 yard line of closing Instagram as a customer, and a lot of people are into horoscopes. So,
Wow.
but then we had a moment. We just checked each other. We're like, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. Like, is this what we want our legacy to be? That we invest in a horoscope company? And it was at that time where we just paused and said, okay, our true investment criteria is: are we excited about it? And is it an F yes? I don't want to get any SEC fines, but and then you're like, well, what is an F yes? And it's like, well, different things at different moments, but it's usually can't believe that we get to work with these founders. Can't believe the massive problem slash pain point that they're solving for. Can't believe that they're doing something that allows us to like massively create an unfair advantage because we know so many introductions to make. And when that happens, and when it's an FES, that's when we move with lightning speed. We've done some deals where, so this is what I'll tell entrepreneurs, like, we'll meet you at time A with these data points. Keep us informed, pop, pop. then time B, like, okay, that's a good milestone. And then we'll pull the trigger. So we call those, there's the invest now, there's the pass, and then there's the watch category. And so sometimes we'll have a watch. It's better hygiene for all of us if it's a yes or no. But sometimes we're like, man, we really like what this team is doing, but we just need a few more data points.
And with that watch category, is that when you would want a founder to say send an update monthly, where it's just a breakdown of maybe new numbers, how the company's doing, how things have evolved, if they've added new team members? Like, what would you want included in those monthly updates? And do you want it monthly?
I think if there's enough content to do it monthly, you can. I think probably every other month or once a quarter is about right. And Techstars was always good about sort of enforcement of this upon their portfolio companies, but you would send out a short investor update, put everybody on there that you've talked to or are talking to, and your family and friends. Remind everyone, Ride Scout is a ground transportation app that helps you get from A to B, optimizing for time and money. And so, because we see thousands of deals, and it's easy for us to forget what Ride Scout does. So, and then just quick little highlights. And wow, that's a big pickup that caught my attention. And then that is what creates FOMO, which I've learned powers all things personally and professionally. And then that's when you'll see investors might make a move then. So I think it's important to be good at investor update. I'd like some of the best founders are very good at investor updates. And what they'll do, and nobody's better at this than Blake Hall of IDME, right up front, here's my asks. I need these intros, these leaders at these companies or these government institutions. And then you're pulling your investors into that update, and you're like, oh, I know that. I know the CTO at the Department of State. I could make an intro. He and I were roommates at MIT or whatever. I would say, in summary, default to over communication and
Hmm.
just be mindful of, you don't want to look desperate, right? Um, it's around the right touch points because we all get slammed with deals. I mean, emails, I get 300 to 500 emails a day, probably 100, 150 texts a day. And
Wow.
I this is just what happens, right? It's not when you've been out there a while, a lot of inbound. And so it's like just enough information, keep us informed. And I tell people, don't worry, you never bother me. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to bother Craig, but I do need pings so you can say, hey, not sure if you saw my update email, but wanted to call it out. So there's an art and a science, right? We know this to knowing who you're trying to get a hold of. How can you get to them, and then how do you operate within their information pipe, so to speak? And what we tell entrepreneurs is get the warm intro. All but one of our fund investments has been made through a warm intro. And
Wow. One out of
I,
hundreds?
I say that, and it makes me cringe a little bit because I'm like, well, sounds unfair, right? Sounds unfair that it's got to be warm intro. But the truth is, when you look at our networks, Kelly's and mine, and the Moonshots, you can get to us. Somebody knows us who can make the intro. And then another thing we say is, well, Chris knows Craig, and so Chris is going to send a note. We'll just go with that. But if you have 5 people that know me, they should all send me a note. Because then I'm like, all right, I got enough. Okay, I'm going to meet Chris. I want to see what he's doing. Everybody's in my, you must be
Wow.
onto something because I have 5 friends. The warm intro is then hot. So it's perfectly fine to pound us. That's usually more helpful, even more curation. And a lot of
Wow. I
times
like
these are
that.
founders that know us, LPs that know us, friends and family that know us, know what we like to invest. So it makes sense that warm intros power it. I don't like that because you don't want to miss out on a great deal where you may not have a relationship. So we do triage every deal. And the last thing I'll say in this, and then I'll pause, is in our fund two, we triaged 5,901 deals and invested in 17. So we're only investing in the top 0.25%. That's what founders are, that's what they're up against, that sort of deal flow.
Wow.
So
When I put those numbers
that's it.
out there,
That's an eye opener for some of your listeners.
because I don't think founders realize how much competition there is. So it sounds crazy when you say they should do pitch practice. But I think pitching practice could help you in terms of when you do get that once in a lifetime opportunity, essentially, to get funding from some of these venture firms, you need to be 100% ready. Is there one thing that you think a founder has to do in their pitch to really win you over?
I think we're looking immediately for leadership. I'm sure you and Kelly, I know you guys talked about this, and so I don't need to go. I don't need to steal his thunder. Kelly can talk a lot about it. So we're definitely sussing out leadership. It's a few things that get us to a yes, but will get us to a fast no is if we're sensing like a lot of I and not a lot of we when we know that there's we there. So there are some red flags, but to answer your question, we're looking for, a track record of leadership success. And then it's like domain expertise. Like, does the person know what they're doing? We do look for founders who understand the VC ecosystem, who do know the language, because we have very little time. We have to manage that time carefully. And
Yeah.
if someone doesn't know the landscape at all, you end up in a situation where we used to say in the Army and command jobs, it's easy to spend 90% of your time on 10% of your soldiers. And so we need founders who understand the space enough, right? Enough. They don't have to be total, you know, VC expert, but do need to understand the mechanics of our business. Otherwise, as much as we love them, the expense of our time becomes a negative factor if we know we're going to have to spend a lot of time getting that founder up to speed.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest gaps in the startup world right now is you kind of have founders on this side who want money from the VC firms on this side, and they don't know what the VCs actually want. They know they want big companies, but there's a lot of just misunderstanding. I don't know anything, in terms of what founders have literally sat and told me, which is kind of mind blowing because I expect them, if you want millions of dollars from somebody, you would kind of think that you would know what that person wants when they give you $1 million, right? Like, wouldn't that be something that you kind of know? So what's one of those things that a founder just has to know from from yours, like you said, the VC, like the terminology and maybe some of the processes? What's something that they just have to know about the way venture capital works?
I think they need to know when they're raising a round, what do we get for that money in terms of milestones and runway, and how does the achievement of those milestones get us to the next round of financing? Because we're always thinking about, even when we're raising a round today, we're thinking about the next round. And so founders have to, I mean, one thing they got to be able to do is raise money, right? And so we've met some very technical founders who can't sell, and we're like, it's a problem. And now the way we lead rounds, where let's say we lead a $3 million round with $1.5 million check, they have to go get the other $1.5 million. So that's a test in and of itself. Now we're going to help with introductions, but we learned in Fund One where if we had a round of 2 million and we're like, well, let's just do the whole thing, then we come to learn that founders not very good at fundraising. They were able to convince us, but when you have a technical founder who knows how to sell, okay, now, you know,
Have you
that's
seen it?
that's a happy face.
Have you seen the successful relationship where co-founder technical, co-founder can sell, and they just work together in tandem? Is that like a common theme?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I think the more sophisticated they are, you'll have a technical CEO and then like a highly technical CTO. But if you have, say, a military veteran, I used to say this to military veterans who, especially among the officer corps, but even among the enlisted, are usually like a mile wide and an inch deep. But they're good at, they could sell, they have leadership training. They don't have the technical training because, they were always moving jobs, moving around. So I would say go find your Jedi, right? Which is what you're describing, where you'd have sort of that military veteran with the tech, and that could be a 1+1 = 3 or more.
I
So
like
yeah, we're
that.
we're 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 comfortable with it. You don't want the CEO to go, I don't know anything about this technical stuff, and but I'm going to bring in. Here comes Chris. Chris will explain it to you. You don't want that. You want to be able to hang in the room. The CEO needs to be able to represent the company by herself or himself, without the CTO in the room. But if it is a highly technical company, then we're going to want to have the Jedi in the room and build it and see how they're interacting together, right? Because that's another data point, the health of the partnership. But if it's very technical, we're going to want to make sure you have somebody who really knows what they're doing technically.
Ah, okay, okay. See, guys, I think we're learning a lot more in terms of what it takes to really pitch and then even be ready to pitch. When you look at the pitch decks, because you said you looked at 5,000 companies for one fund, like how in depth do these pitch decks need to be? How many pages are you looking for? Is it like a specific formula you follow, or is it just, hey, show us some good details on your company?
I mean, there's no prescribed, you know, format. We used to share a DocSend here's a nice, guide to a pitch deck, and they're able to suss out how much time people are spending on the decks and where they're spending the most time, what sort of slides. Is it the problem? Is it the solution? Is it the economics? And so it's not so much about exactly what's in the deck. I would say you don't want it to be too long, and you don't want it to be a not slick deck. Like the deck should be slick. Like there's just no reason nowadays that you just don't have a good looking deck. And I mean, this has been like this for years, but that's especially it depends on what they're building. But if it's a consumer facing business, then you would expect it to be ultra slick. But it's just
Yeah.
if I see a deck that looks like it was like PowerPoint, C plus B minus level PowerPoint, I'm not going to throw it out. I'm going to judge it and say, man, I'm worried about this team that can't build at least a nice deck. Everybody can have a nice deck, but at the end of the day, we say no to amazing companies all the time. I joke that I say no for a living because
Wow.
it's got to be an extraordinary leadership
Yeah.
team. It's got to be a big market opportunity like that scales and can have. This is a power law business, so we're looking for every one of our investments to return the whole fund. And then this is the X factor. Do our networks and our operational experiences provide the proverbial unfair advantage? So there's a founder Kelly and I are very close to, West Point graduate, who's a force of nature, who's building a platform, an AI platform in the ed tech space, and we're just like, there's I don't know who to call. We
Oh,
don't
wow.
know the industry, which is why we don't invest in, generally speaking, there's an exception, biotech and health tech. I don't know experts in the FDA. I don't have relationships in the health bio med tech space. So the X factor really can be the how we can help. Founders are like, I'm crushing. What do you mean? I'm like this world class team. hockey stick. But if we feel like we can't help create the unfair advantage, then we don't want to invest because there are companies that will have one, two, three, and we know we just have to be patient, and we'll get to that. FES.
Yeah, and it sounds like you don't want to just lean on the money factor because I think a lot of founders focus heavy on what VC can give me the most money. Like you watch Shark Tank, sometimes they'll pick the shark they want to work with based on how much money they're giving or how little equity they're losing, not thinking about the other impact in terms of mentorship, connections, all of that stuff.
100%. And it's like which shark truly can amplify the company that you're building, and it's so important. And that will happen where founders will say, "Hey, I got a better deal. They gave me a higher valuation and more money." And we'll say, we understand that's tempting, but are they the right partner? Or, you're going to maybe with us, it's costing you an additional point or point and a half or 2 points from a dilution perspective. But if this company goes, that's going to be a negligible difference. And if you want it to go, you got to have the right investors on the bus. And we think we're the right investors. So our track record with winning deals is very strong. I think we've lost three deals of about 40 fund deals. One of them,
Yeah.
we just we partnered with another VC to compete, and it was not a good idea. And then somebody else just paid more. Number two went for a brother-in-law over us. Third one, they went in another direction. But generally, and this is important, I'm getting to the important point here for founders is you have to diligence your investors in the same way they diligence you. And that's an unfair advantage for Kelly and me. When founders talk to other founders who work with us, we win the deal because they'll say these guys are part of the team. They're like co-founders. And so
Like co-founders is good. That must be a huge compliment to you because after speaking to you now and also speaking to Kelly, it's very clear that you're not the kind of firm who just throws money and expects an update every couple of weeks and is going off to go raise the other round. You're sitting there also with the founders like, hey, let's talk. I want to make sure you're getting the results. If you need help, you can reach out to me. Like you seem really, really hands on.
we are. That's the way. That's what we enjoy the most. We think we also get the most value for our investors when we do that, and we do invest with conviction. So this isn't. We try to lead and have a board seat. It's not always going to be like that. Sometimes instances where maybe it's a board observer seat. Maybe we just get information rights. We try to be as active as we can with the company. So, but if we're not the lead investor, if we're doing a follow on, it really kind of depends on the sophistication of the company. For example, like Cart.com, we invested in the first institutional round of Cart.com, and Omer Tariq, the CEO, is a total pro. Sold his last company to Home Depot. So we're there to support, make introductions, help in any way possible. But we also know a founder like that is not going to need a lot of
Yeah.
help.
Sounds good. He's sounds like already ahead of the game. Sold to Home Depot, good to go. Done the work already. Man,
Yeah.
this is a really insightful conversation. Before we go, I always ask this question: you're an investor. I'm a founder. I got 6 months of traction. I fit your narrative for the VC firm. What other advice, what last piece of insight do you want to give to founders who are out there putting in the work, who are getting traction, but are having trouble getting funding?
Well, I will first empathize that it is hard to fundraise now. It's been a hard fundraising environment, and you can experience this like cognitive dissonance because you'll see these AI companies getting these massive rounds, and you're like, well, I'm only trying to raise like $500,000, and I know this is a moonshot. So it is hard to fundraise. First of all, I. think one of my this I don't know if this talking point will resonate in the age of AI, but in the last couple of years, what I've sort of seen is great companies, truly great companies, take 10 years or more to build. And
Wow.
even when I think about like an ID.me, which is a North Star investment, probably our most famous, we've invested the most in it, been since every round. But it was like a steady, just little bit of increase in slope, and then boom, $1 billion contract from Treasury years ago, and that was a 10+ year journey. And so I guess that what I'm saying is, if it's not happening immediately, that's not unexpected. I mean, I think you just have to know, proverbially, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And I've had to have conversations with founders. Not, I mean, even recently with a Fund 2 company, not moonshotting. I said, fellas, we expect you to leave it all on the field, but we don't expect you to bleed out on the field. Okay, so let's button it up. Let's button it up and let's get some oxygen masks on you too, which AKA means like wind down the company and you guys find jobs and catch your breath. Most startups fail, right? And so I think we all know that. And
And
it's
you got to
okay
be
to
ready.
fail. But yeah, I don't have any perfect advice, but I do think, I guess if I had one thing, I would say you got to move around a bit. I do think place matters. And, like in
Really?
Austin, we have a very vibrant scene here, especially at the Capital Factory in Austin, which is like the HQ for the early stage tech ecosystem. So being around other founders, investors, partners, like place people,
Mm.
it can be tougher raising if you're from a small town somewhere. I understand why you want to live next to your family, but it can make it harder to raise money if you're not in a place where people invest.
Got to relocate. So, are there any like main
I'm not,
hubs?
yeah, I
Like,
don't even like to say it. I mean, obviously it's a very remote virtual world, but there's still the, the serendipity. Like I say, Capital Factory, 100% chance of serendipity, Capital Factory. But you got to be
hmm,
there. You got to be there. It's going to happen in an elevator. It's going to happen getting coffee. It's going to be you run into me, and next thing you know, we're investing. So you got to set yourself up for serendipity.
set yourself up for that success. Man, this was really insightful, Craig. I myself learned
Thanks,
a lot
Chris.
more. I love these interviews where I get to kind of cheat and get good content for the audience, but also learn myself. Man, makes it so much fun.
Thank
Well,
you for
last
the
question.
opportunity, Chris. Yeah,
My last one. Are you open to cold outreach from the founders listening to the show?
yeah, of course. I mean, I think if they email at Craig at Moonshots Capital, don't forget the S, Moonshots Capital. You want to put a header in there that says like enjoyed the podcast with you and Chris, something that adds some warmth to it. And I tell that to founders when I meet them someplace. I'm like, make sure you say this is because as I and my EA manage the inbound in my inbox, it helps to delineate the emails. Like, Craig has to see this one, or this one will go right into the team will review it, which is fine either
Mm-hmm.
way. But if someone's watching this, that's some warmth that's happening
Warm,
by
warm
itself.
intros, as we always say on the show. Warm intros. Again, Craig, thank you, man. This was really great.
Thank you, Chris. Enjoyed the opportunity.